So the other day we did a whole episode about Copperfield, and we had a whole bunch of clips planned, but we only got through one clip, just one, because
a lot
we
to
got
talk
into
about there. We all got excited, you know.
We did get excited. We all got sent to our boyhood personas. We were in our boyhood clothes. We were looking at Copperfield with eyes of wonder. I'm just rambling now.
Well, it's easy to do, right? When you're looking at that magic, he definitely elevates each of the effects that he takes on. He elevates it to the highest level that he possibly can. And I think I said it before, it's just inspirational, you know, to see that that's possible. Because a lot of these things, when you see them in a book, you know, especially if you're reading an older trick, it's flat. You know, you read this thing, you have to have a lot of imagination to pump that thing up and make it into a big balloon that's floating that everyone wants to look at, you know. And it's a tricky thing to be creative and make these things happen. But to have sources like David and, you know, other magicians that take these classic plots and make them into these beautiful pieces that you can't look away from, you know, I think that's the stuff that you need. You need to have several sources like that just can show you what's possible, so that you can be inspired and try to achieve similar results. And, you know, I think it's just an ongoing, lifelong process. You're just constantly working and refining things, because I think once you get to a point where you say like, this trick is done, I finished it, I think it's dead. You know what I mean? I think it's a living and breathing thing. And when you have your mind open to the idea that the thing is living and breathing, you know, you're always going to like be listening, you know. And like we talk about this often in CC, listen to your spectators, because often they're going to say the line, they're going to give you some line that's like, that's what I've been looking for, I need that line right in that spot. Now the trick is that much better. You know,
how much of that do you guys think Copperfield does? Like when he sets something for his show that he's doing over and over, night after night, how much do you think it changes and gets tweaked?
I have an answer to that.
Go ahead.
I got friendly with Chris Kenner sort of by mistake. You know, I went to go see David Copperfield as a kid because he was coming to Tahoe, and Tahoe is just a couple of hours away from me. And he would do like a week in Tahoe. And I was doing a lot of magic shows. It's probably like 18 or so. And everyone would ask, have you seen David Copperfield? No. So once I was married at the time, and to my first wife, and we went and saw a David Copperfield show, and I spent some money and got like front row seats. I was like, all right, I'm going to get this David Copperfield thing out of the way. I'm going to go see it and be done with it, you know? And we drive up there, we go stay in Tahoe for the night to go see David. And I brought my Chris Kenner book, because David Copperfield wrote the introduction, and there's a big giant picture in there. And I was like, this will be a great thing for my magic memorabilia. How David signed the picture, it'll be on my shelf. It'll be like, you know, yes, I met David, look, you know. And that was my thought process. But we see the show, it's amazing. Had no idea how amazing it was. Was blown away. And I'm standing in line because at that time, David was signing autographs for everybody that wanted an autograph. And I stood in line holding my Chris Kenner book. And Chris Kenner comes around the corner wheeling a dolly. He's got a hand truck, and it's just boxes full of programs. The big David Copperfield program from the show for David to sign and sell to these folks that want the autograph, right?
Right.
And he stops dead in his track. And he's like, no way, that's my book. It's like, what? He's like, you got my book. It's like, what do you mean? And he's all, I'm Chris Kenner. And he flips over his laminate. And it's Chris Kenner. I was like, whoa, no way. He's like, and I was like, you know, that's neat that David Copperfield's here and all, but I have so many questions for you, man. Can we hang out? You know? And he's like, yes, but I've got to do this, but let's talk. Right. So he does the autograph thing. I get up there, Chris signs my book, David signs my book. And afterwards I go and meet with Chris, and we BS for about 15 minutes. He's like, I'm really sorry. I told you we could hang out, but I have to go. We hired a comedian that came in tonight because we've been working this trick for the past year or so. And I don't remember which trick it was in the show that we saw, but he said, we're going up to the hotel room in the suite, and we're going to go review tapes, and we're going to go write jokes with this guy who's going to help us, you know, go to the next level with the presentation on this trick. Okay. So it's an ongoing process. They hire people, you know, obviously, you know, they have the magic team on staff that's handling all of the technical aspects of all the magic, but I think whatever it takes to get that thing to be the best that it can be. Right. And I think that they work on it years sometimes until it's perfect. But then yes, he definitely gets to a point where it's like it's a showpiece, and when you see it on TV, that's the way you're going to see it in the live show if you go see the live show, right? But
tell
yeah.
everybody, just for, there's a lot of people watching on YouTube probably don't really know who Chris Kenner is to David Copperfield. Briefly, before we watch the first clip, just give everybody a really brief rundown of how that works.
It actually is good because this clip we're going to watch, this is Chris Kenner's magic that David's doing. And Chris Kenner was, well, Steve probably has a connection to this. There was a restaurant in Indiana called Illusions, and Chris was one of the house magicians at Illusions. And he was just, you know, an excellent magician in the Midwest, was making his living as a magician. And the way Chris told me is that David came into town and saw him in the show. He was coming to see a specific trick that he did, that was that ring flight we were talking about with the little baby shoe. Chris was doing that in the show.
Oh, really?
And David wanted that for the TV show. So he came to see Chris do that at the club. And Chris, you know, he knew David Copperfield was on TV, and he was like, you know, yeah, whatever, you know, David Copperfield, whatever. But then he met David, and they hit it off, like, famously, like, immediately, like, we're just like buddies, right? And they were talking about magic, and David asked him about the trick, and Chris was like, yeah, take it. That's fine, man. I don't care. Do the trick. Just as long as you're the one that does it, no one else does it. You know, I just want to keep it exclusive. If it's just you and it's just me doing it, I'm okay with that, you know? And he just let it go. And then out of that, what happened is that David would call up Chris and say, hey, man, we're coming through town. Would you mind coming out to the show? I'd love to get your notes. We're working on a couple new things, and I would just love to get your point of view on it. And that happened, right? So he's doing that for a couple of years. And then eventually he's like, hey, man, I have some problems, some magic problems. Can I have you come out for a couple of weeks and come work on some stuff? And then slowly but surely he became part of the Copperfield operation, right? And eventually he was, is now. I mean, he is the magic coordinator. He's the guy that runs the.
He's the executive producer.
He's running the entire, right. He's the executive producer now, right? That's exactly right. But he's running the entire show now, right? Like, everybody that's on that show, they report to Chris. Like, he's the guy that's like, all right, everybody go to the restaurant. I'll be over there in a minute, and, you know, we'll take care of dinner, you know? Like,
oh, he's real. Like, he's a big deal there, yeah.
He's running the entire thing. But I just happened to get lucky that I bumped into him when he was early on working with Copperfield, and I was a super magic geek, and, you know, and he just saw, I'm sure, a reflection of himself in me enough that he was like, hey, I'll help this kid out. He's sort of isolated here in Northern California, and he needs some magic friends. He's how I met Michael Weber, right? He told me, he said, drop my name around Michael Weber and tell him that I told you to do it, and he'll give you some time. And he totally did. Like, that's how I met Michael Weber, is because Chris Kenner told me to go and tap him on the shoulder and tell him I knew him through Chris, right?
How great would it have been when you saw Kenner push in the cart and he goes, hey, that's my book. I'm Chris Kenner. And you go, oh, awesome. Can you get David to sign this for me?
No, but I was a geek. I was a super geek because I was sort of like halfway there.
But it would have been funny.
Yeah, it would have been, well, in a mean way. I mean, mean fun. Yeah.
I know. I'm from New Jersey. Everything's got a little dark little, you know.
That's pretty funny, though. All right, let's watch this. Let's watch this Kenner-inspired David Copperfield clip that is, again, showcasing how great Copperfield is in the close-up arena. All right, here we go. You see it?
We got it.
I'm going to show you a home movie. That's me. And that's my grandfather. He's the first person to ever teach me magic. I was about 10 years old, and he taught me a card trick with 4 aces. And the aces would appear and disappear. It was really cool. And since I was 10 years old, it took me many months to master it. After I did, I showed it to everybody, and I decided to make magic my life. Everybody thought I was crazy, except my grandfather, who always gave me encouragement. And I promised him if I ever had any success that I would do his card trick in my show. Well, my grandfather passed away before I ever did a big show. But Grandpa, if you're listening, tonight I'm going to keep my promise.
Oh my gosh! Like, I'm already crying.
He's so sweet.
That was the year there was no snow.
And there's something about a license plate and an alien.
Look at this look right here too. That David's like, yeah, I know, I just got him. I got him. All right, here we go.
Now every magician on the planet after this started out, my grandfather taught me magic. This is the genesis of that right here.
Yeah.
Effective use of the music too, right?
Yes.
Like a
No
movie.
doubt.
Hey, good job, guys.
Okay. All
Say what you
right.
want about David Copperfield, but he can do the Pete Fortin Ace production, man. I mean, that's not an easy thing to do. That's very technically difficult.
His hands were not shaking
Not
at
for a
all.
second.
Steady as a rock right there.
But to be fair, Chris Kenner is the man who taught him how to do that. So, you know, if Chris is teaching you how to do something, I think you're going to know how to do it.
But
you know?
don't you think it's true that any, I don't want to say big name magician because that means different things to us, but anyone you see on TV, they always have a team of guys, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Just about, they always have like 5 or 6 guys working on stuff, thinking up ideas.
Yeah, I will. Yes, I agree with you, but those guys aren't Chris Kenner.
No. Chris Kenner is.
He's otherworldly, man. I mean, there's only one of those dudes. He's a spiritual beast.
This is only live, right? And people can watch it. So I'm gonna stick my neck out and I'm just gonna say that
Here we go.
Copperfield got good after Kenner joined. Because previous to Kenner joining is all those other things you see,
Agreed.
a real 70s dance, you know, I don't even know how to explain.
And the magic was just lower level. It wasn't like it is like now. It's like top notch. Like,
oh, it's the best in the world.
It's the best in the world.
Yeah, but Kenner is the genesis of that. He's the one that stopped Copperfield from being hokey.
Agreed.
You know what I mean?
And I think that Copperfield had some coolness right before Kenner joined up, but it was, and I would argue that he was probably cool enough for Kenner to agree to do the job, right?
Yeah. Now Kenner is after Statue of Liberty.
Oh, way after.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah, because Statue of Liberty I think is like 83, and Kenner doesn't join up until like 91.
Yeah,
maybe 92.
Ron Porter says Kenner and Homer are talking about Homer Lewag are in a different league. Yep.
Yeah,
that's
no
true.
doubt.
Absolutely.
When did Don Wayne leave the Copperfield team? Do you know?
I think he did it until he passed, because I remember, you know, I got in with Chris and I asked him if I could talk magic with him. He goes and meets with the comedian. He gave me his business card. He said, "Hey man, next time I'm in your neck of the woods, call me and we'll get together." And I started doing that and calling him. And I remember one time I called him and we had lunch. I went and picked him up at the sports arena, and I picked up him and Don Wayne, and the three of us had lunch together. I actually had my son. My son was an infant. I had my son with me at the time, but it was the 4 of us sat down and we had lunch and talked magic. It was amazing.
How cool is that?
Yeah. So I think Don was there till the very end, because Don was he was just on Copperfield's team as a consultant, sort of the way Chris was in the beginning, in that he was brought in, and Don was happy to go and live his life and not be on the road, because, you know, living in a tour bus and hotels is not easy. And
those guys did that a lot.
That's not for everyone. Those guys live in those buses, and well, now it's Vegas, right? They've been in Vegas for I don't know. That's over. But yeah, that touring lifestyle is, you know, it's a young man's game.
Copperfield is the king of the 4-minute tricks. All right. So the running time on this is 3 minutes, 36 seconds. He knows how to time a trick, doesn't he?
All right. So he produced the aces. That's where we left, right?
That's where we left off. Yeah.
All right.
Wait for it.
Right on the
Right on the button, as they say.
So good. You know,
That
it's
was
funny. I
good.
remember talking to Chris about this one, like asking him, like, how did the card trick come about? You know, why did he have that card trick even in the show? And he said, because David had seen at the time, I think it was around 90, there was a thing called Dream of Aces that Gary Ouellette put out through Cameron Academy of Magic. And there's sort of Copperfield's contemporary in Canada, or one of them in Canada, was Alain Charquet, I think is how you say his name. But he was stage illusionist, good-looking guy that did all the, you know, similar act to what Copperfield did. He was just a Canadian guy, and he was touring Canada. And he was doing this in his stage show, and Copperfield saw him do Dream of Aces, and he's like, I need that. I want that in the show. What a beautiful moment. You can tell the whole story about Grandpa, you know, the whole thing, right? And Chris was with him, and he's like, you're not doing that trick, man. Because it was totally like it was a nice handling of McDonald's Aces, right? It's a really beautiful handling of McDonald's, but it's, you know, McDonald's Aces, and if you know McDonald's Aces, you can smell it from 100 feet away. Ah, it's McDonald's Aces, you know? And Chris was like, no, man, you're not going to do that on television. Let me work with this. Let me think about this for a minute. And that's what he turned into David, is what we just watched.
Yeah, that was a whole different level right there. Did
Yeah,
you hear
that's totally cool.
Did you hear the audience gasp whenever he spread the aces there?
Mhm.
That's a that's a gaspable moment, man. It's like, where did they come from? So
I love
good.
the way he spreads those cards too, where he does them with his fingers and he's really spreads them like that, you know? Like it's just pretty beautiful. That's probably, would you say that is probably the most intricate close-up magic trick that David Copperfield attempts?
The most classical card magic style close-up
Like
routine.
technically have to be technically proficient to do it.
Yeah, but I would argue that all of them are like that. Like I remember seeing a clip of him doing, remember the trick I taught in the back room, the Immaculate Connection, that Paul Harris linking cards thing?
Yeah.
He did that on television. Technically demanding, but in its own way, right? And
I mean,
I would say that probably all of these, all of his tricks that he does close up, they all are like pretty technically demanding because the magic is so strong. It has to be, right?
I mean, to do that change where that visual change where you like literally like that thing. I mean, that's not like super easy to do.
No.
You know?
And to be fair, be nice to yourself, Adam. He's only doing it with a handful of cards. He's not doing it with the whole deck, right?
Oh, right. That's true. You're right.
But yes, he does it. He does it beautifully, and I've seen him do it live a few times. And you know, you can't. It's tough. But the second time I saw it live, I was able to resist the temptation of watching the screen and just watch him, to see it from that angle, to see all of the moves. You know, and he's awesome, man. He can do all of that stuff as well as anyone that I've ever seen do that stuff. All of those moves that are in that trick. He's great. David is awesome. BJ told me an interesting story about, because BJ worked for David for a few years. He's sort of, he's the marketing guru, right? That's what he really does. He's the co-branding expert. And he helped David basically formulate the marketing plan to sell. When they were touring, he basically helped them create the marketing plan to tour and set up the advertising before they got to each town and, sell the show, get people to, butts in the seats basically. But in the beginning, BJ was traveling with them. He was on the bus, and, him and Homer and Chris would just jam at night on magic stuff. Because, you've seen BJ, he's a monster, he's a great close-up magician, knocks me down every single time I hang out with him, whether we're doing this or in person. It's like, dude, just knocks me down. But he's a guy that can hang with Chris and Homer and, keep them interested in jamming all night while they're on a bus going to the next town, right? He told me one night they were doing that and David joined in and was like, hey guys, let me try one. Let me do a trick. And he does he does a card manipulation act for these guys on the bus. And BJ said it was flawless. It was one of the most amazing card manip things he's ever seen in his life.
Like back palming and stuff?
Totally. Split fans, the whole deal. And David was just the man at it. So I think the dude, he's just a great magician, man. It's just that, he does a lot of illusions, and to us close-up guys, it's sort of incongruent. But when you see him do the close-up stuff, you go, he's one of us. He's doing the same stuff we're doing.
Oh, Grandpa would have been proud.
Grandpa would have been proud.
Yeah.
Well, he is the most successful magician of our time, right? Of all time at this point.
Steve,
So,
I read
Grandpa would be proud.
somewhere that every year he makes like the Forbes top 50 list of highest paid entertainers.
Entertainers, yeah.
Yep.
Top 10, I think, actually.
Yeah,
So,
like
and
he's made
I
like
think
80,
that's been the case for like the past 30 years, right?
yeah, he's made like 84 million a year or something.
But those guys, I mean, if you ever looked at that schedule at MGM, I mean, it is heavy, dude. It's like probably more shows than anybody, I would think. I mean, they're doing like 3 or 4 on a Saturday.
That's right.
Really?
Yeah, I mean, they probably do 400 shows a year or more, I would think.
He's working as hard as he's ever done it.
Yeah.
Totally.
Wow.
Totally.
I would be like, when do we schedule time on the island? That's what I would be like. Can we go to the island now?
All right. Well, let's take a look. This next one is I'd say this is the one that just pulled the pants off of me. I mean, well, they all did. I mean, they always did.
That's
when
right.
you saw them live, you knew they were new. You hadn't seen any of these before when Copperfield did them on TV. But this next one, just blew my pants off. All right. This is, I'm not even going to announce it. I'm just going to show it.
Just let it happen. It's going to be
Here.
fine.
Let it happen.
Hey, you know, a few days ago, a good friend of mine, Wayne Gretzky, who happens to be the greatest hockey player of all time, let me borrow a baseball card that he bought. It's worth about $500,000, just so I could try to put it back together after I first tore it up. Check it out. We're in my warehouse with Wayne Gretzky, and he's going to let me tear up his $500,000 baseball card just so I can try to magically put it back together. You sure you're going to let me do this?
Well, David, they trusted you with the Statue of Liberty, and you brought that monument back. I think I can trust you with my baseball card, but I want you to know I'm fully insured.
Oh, insured. Thanks for the vote of confidence. This baseball card's very rare. In the early 1900s, the great shortstop, Honus Wagner, didn't want his young fans to have to buy tobacco to get his baseball card. So he had his cards recalled and destroyed. Only a few survived, and this one's in mint condition. It's sort of the Mona Lisa of baseball cards. That's why it's worth so much. You really gonna let me do this?
Sure.
Let's go.
Just take a peek at Copperfield's belt buckle.
Yeah, right.
I think you
It's misdirection.
A few years ago, Wayne and the Kings owner, Bruce McNall, bought the world's most valuable baseball card for close to $500,000. Tonight, I'm gonna try to tear it up and put it back together, believe it or not. Now, Wayne, the first thing you've got to do is take the card and take this pen and sign your name across the card. That way we'll know it's your card, not a duplicate.
You mean you want me to face this card?
Wait a minute. That baseball card is worth $500,000, and your signature is worth about $100. So it'll increase its value by $100.
Well, at least 99.
Trust me, son. You're not too happy about that, huh? So remember, guys, this is just an illusion.
Oh, no.
I don't want to ruin your day.
Yeah. I think you just ruined it right there.
2 pieces. Pretty good, huh?
That's great.
All right. Easy, huh?
This is so good.
Totally, man.
4 pieces.
This is definitely one of my favorites.
All right. 4 pieces, each worth about $125,000 each. Only if I put them back together. It's a good thing it's insured.
Wait a minute. The insurance only covers accidental damage. It doesn't cover willful destruction.
Well, I guess the heat's on me. Guys, I need you to hand me the pieces. 1 piece at a time. Watch. 2 pieces.
Wow.
And the next piece. In slow motion.
Wow. Incredible.
Finally, the last piece. All you have to do is touch them together.
Look at this. That's great.
but it's all creased up now, which pretty much ruins my card.
No problem. All I have to do is iron them out.
Oh, that's great. Wow. That's great, David, but what about the signature?
Oh, Wayne, no problem. Remember, you collect baseball cards.
Very cool.
Oh, wow.
I collect autographs. Name dropper.
I was kind of like speechless that whole routine. I wanted to say something, but I was so engrossed watching, I couldn't speak. That is one magical routine right there, man.
I think that's what set off all of those torn and restored cards in the 90s. Everyone was trying to do that, but there's an element there that you can never do, that no one could ever accomplish, because there's a setup there that you need to do to make that thing happen that is not practical,
Yeah.
But Guy Hollingworth came pretty close, right? His technology and the Reformation. We talked about that in CC. The Reformation's close, right? It's got a lot of the techniques there that make that thing similar, right?
Mhm.
But there's another thing that's going on above and beyond that. I remember as a young man being obsessed with this trick, and I had an in. I was able to talk to Chris Kenner once a year, twice a year, and hit him up and talk to him about magic. And I started showing up with models like, all right, man, so here's the thing. I built the gaff, I was like hitting him up about this trick forever and ever. And, and he was really kind to me. I shouldn't have been asking him, and I didn't have proper magic etiquette, but I think I was a young man and I didn't know. And he was sort of fostering that and helping me. Right. But I was showing up with, all right, here's my solution, dude. And he'd go, all right, that's good. That's good. That's good. And then he gave me one thing that blew my mind, and this is going to blow all of your minds when you think about that trick. When you go back and watch this again, too, the trick isn't how does he put the card back together? You can probably figure that out. The trick is, where do the pieces go?
That's exactly what I was thinking. That's because there's never when you do a torn and restored card, there's never a moment where you go.
That's right. That's right. And I'll tell you this, that it can be done. There's a way to do this. And there's a thing that is out there that was out in the early 80s, maybe late 70s. That was a marketed thing. It was a manuscript that was actually out on the market. And it was a way to do a specific card trick without using palms, right? And this sort of technology carried over to, this. And I don't want to say too much because I don't want to give away the trick, because who am I to take away that wonder from you? You know what I mean?
No, don't. I don't.
It's a beautiful thing.
I actually don't want to know how that's done. Yeah, good. I don't. Good. Like, I do have some theories, but I'll never know. And I'm fine with that. I'm okay with that. What I'm laughing about is the thought of a young Alex bringing in prototypes to show.
It was the worst, dude. I went to lunch, the lunch I told you about with Don Wayne. That was one of them. Like, I busted out the prototype in front of him and Don Wayne. I was like, all right, here's what I've got. And it had all this stuff going on. And Chris looks at it and he's like, it's pretty good. And he shows it to Don Wayne, and Don's like, he's pretty close.
Oh my God. That would have been the best.
Isn't that one of the things that's just so great about magic, is like you get to meet these guys.
Yeah, that's magic is cool that you get to, if you want to, you can totally meet your heroes and like hang out.
Yeah. And usually they're okay guys. Sometimes.
Usually.
Usually.
Well, I will say, if you're watching this on YouTube and you're not a member of a magic club, we're the three of us, we're coaches and panelists over at Conjure Community, and this is what we do. I mean, we do magic all the time. And if you want a really cool place to call home, a place that you're not going to be judged, that you're just going to be helped and motivated, and always have people looking to help you just get better and achieve what you want, you should think about joining a real magic club. Conjure Community may be the place for you. We do love magic. And if you get to know Alex long enough, maybe he'll tell you how that damn trick is done.
He will.
I don't want to know, though. All right. Well, torn and restored card, it certainly is the best.
And I would say, like, just the way we saw the trick before was that the ace assembly effect. That's the best ace assembly effect I've ever seen, right?
Mm-hmm.
I don't think anyone touches that. And this torn and restored card, it's the best torn and restored card I've ever seen. And it, you know, it's the reason that seeing David Copperfield do close-up magic is so cool, because he's elevating these plots to their highest level that's possible at the time that he's attacking these things. And it's like I said earlier, it's just inspirational, man. I love it. I love it so much.
Dude, I can't imagine how much tech they had to pull together in the 80s or in the early 90s to get smoke to come out of.
I was thinking the same thing.
Oh, you know, I'm glad you mentioned that, because here's the thing. There's a thing that this company put out. Cameron Academy of Magic was this magic company up in Canada that had all these great things that you could only get from them for the most part. And one of them was that smoke gimmick, and you could buy it two ways from them. Fully built for a few $100, or you could buy the plans, and you know, you get all the chemicals and you can do the whole thing. But there was, like, maybe a month before this aired on television, there was an ad in Genie magazine. Check it out. Those of you that are Genie subscribers, go into the archive. It's probably around 91 or 92, but there's a full page ad selling this trick. It's on the market as a trick that you can buy, and it's like astronomical price, like $495, and in like 90 or 91, that's like an unheard of price for, like, at least an advertised in a magazine trick. You know, that's like a pretty high price. Mm-hmm. And it only ran for 1 month, and that was it. And I talked to people about this, and like Paul Harris, he said, oh, all the guys I've talked to, the theories that they all have is that the ad was just put out so that everyone will think that there's a real method for this trick, because it's TV magic. Right? Oh, okay.
That's an interesting idea. That's an interesting idea.
I talked to Chris about it. I asked him, I was like, hey, man, I remember there was an ad in the Genie magazine. How come it ran once and it was done and it was over? Oh, and his reasoning was that I think it was CBS that they had the TV contract with. CBS would not allow them to have that footage to put into the package to sell them to the magicians. And without the TV footage, it sort of was like a bunk product, was the reasoning that he gave me. Mm-hmm. And I didn't know what was true, but again, I was a young man and I was hungry and I needed to know. And that's when I started, like, you know, getting into the woodshed and doing arts and crafts and trying to figure out how to, like, put a card back together. You know what I mean?
Ron Porter says that Michael Weber did a smoke from hands, turning a lump of coal into a diamond prior to Copperfield's use. I did not know that.
And I think around that time, there was a bunch of them. I remember Paul Harris had one. He tried to crack that problem probably 5 years before that TV special. He had a little gimmick that was about the size of like a $50 or $1, like in between a dollar size coin and a $50. And it looked like a little mini whoopee cushion. And you just give it a squeeze, and what would happen is it would, like, mix two chemicals together, and it would shoot out a puff of smoke. Problem is that it's chemicals. You know, you're dealing with it being a little chemical reaction happening inside of a little plastic container. And eventually the thing ate itself, right? And the chemicals started leaking out. And it was, you know, whenever you're dealing with smoke, you're dealing with some element that's not going to be, I mean, nowadays, because it's the vape technology, it's not so bad. But I remember even in the mid-90s, someone had this thing they called ultra smoke. And I saw the guy that invented it at a convention, and it was amazing. He wasn't in the dealer's room. This dude just had this big case that he would carry around, and he would have like 10 of these smoke units in there. He'd walk around with this case, and he'd drop the case on the ground and go, hey guys, come here, let me show you something. And he would just do the most simple thing. He would do a retention pass. It was a beautiful retention pass. He'd put a coin in his hand, then he'd go watch, and a puff of smoke would shoot over his hand, and the coin would be gone, and everyone was like, ugh! Everyone's like, here's my money. And he would sell every one of these smoke units out of the case. And he'd go to his hotel room and reload the case. And he went around the convention doing this. It was amazing. But you watch this guy. I watched him do it a couple times, and his fingernails were all yellow around the edges, around the cuticles, because he's shooting chemicals at his hand all day long. You know what I mean? So yeah, at that time, you know, it was a precarious thing to want to have smoke in your act because you're dealing with a chemical reaction.
Remember back in the day, there was a trick. I think it was called Hypno Heat.
Totally. Yeah, it's like rat poison.
So caustic. Yeah, it was so caustic you could die by looking at it.
Yeah, I bought some. I found some and I bought it. And Paul came to my house and he saw it and he's like, throw that stuff in the garbage right now. Why do you even have it in your house?
It's like radioactive.
So I kept the book because there's a lot of cool ideas in there. Like you can have, Adam, it was amazing. You put this stuff like on a gum wrapper in someone's hand and it's like a fire starts in their hand is what they feel like. But you're like, now you're going to feel heat, right? And it's a chemical reaction with this rat poison happening in their hand.
Yeah, it's so poisonous. Like,
It was the worst.
Dude, the things we could buy out of magic catalogs when we were 9 years old.
oh yeah,
Totally.
people were. I was like 9 and I bought that.
Yeah.
The other was, do you remember like you used to get a flash pot and then they'd sell you the flash powder and you had to mix it?
Yeah, it came in 2 parts, and you had to
Right, you had to mix it, and I was like bomb making. You know what I mean?
Totally. Yeah,
You're like,
my lady made me get rid of all that stuff. I don't have any more. I have flash paper now. It's the only fire product I keep in my house. Because it's all of it. It's like the stuff you would make fireworks with, right? You're just like, no, it's just in the closet next to my cards.
Mhm. It's crazy.
Crazy. But it's all about the effect.
Hey man, we're still here. We're still
Right.
here. We made it.
Right. Still got them all.
So did that ace assembly have a name? Steve Forster wants to know. Do you know?
I don't know that it did. I think a lot of people referred to it as Grandpa's Aces. And in the 90s, I think there was a company around here in Northern California that put it out on the market as their own original thing. And they got pretty close. The method wasn't exact, but they hit a lot of the high points. You know, they hit a lot of the method points on there. And they put out a video that was totally shot in someone's backyard with a bad video camera. And, you know, they gave you the special cards you need to do the thing, you know. I think they called it Grandpa's Aces.
Grandpa's Aces. Okay. All right. So this next one, when we were talking about this, you had to remind me what this is. I forgot this was even in Copperfield's act.
We should just watch it and talk about it afterwards because it's so good, man. It's just really, yeah. I've been gushing this whole time. I won't say anything.
Here we go.
Everybody, I love this part. Hello. Come on. What's your name?
Courtney.
Sorry?
Courtney.
Courtney. Right this way, Courtney. How you doing? And a big round of applause for Courtney. Come on. Have a seat right here, Courtney. I'm going to show you something really cool. It's called the vanishing egg. The vanishing egg. The vanishing egg. Plan B. The vanishing egg. Plan C. This will amaze you. This will fool you. It won't amaze anybody else, but it will amaze you. Because the easiest person to amaze is the intelligent person. So if you're amazed, you're intelligent. Watch. The vanishing in slow motion. Watch. The vanishing with 2 eggs. Yes, 2. Watch. 2 over easy. Here we go. Thank you. We got a long way to go. Let's cut to the big finish. The vanishing chicken. This is Elvis. Shake. Shake again. You ever shake hands with a chicken before? You still haven't. That was his foot. Ooh, air conditioning. Put this on your lap. He's full. See? He's Jewish. The vanishing chicken. One. Wait a minute. Change of plans. You and I are going to do this together, okay? Take this hand, put it here. Take this hand, hold on to this corner right here. Hold on to the corner. We're going to lift up the cloth really slowly. You ready? Lift up the cloth really slowly. The cloth goes up into the air. It goes over the chicken and over that chicken just like that. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. That's good. That's good. Yes.
One more little bit here.
Yeah, that's very clever.
4 minutes.
Yeah, that second part there with when he produces the chicken, yeah, it's very clever. It's like a self-contained dove production, but they just sized it up for a chicken, you know?
Exactly. Well, to make it tie
why
around
invent-
to those eggs, right? Instead of doing the paper balls like Slidini, he's doing those eggs. And then they have the bit at the beginning that sets you up for it. So he reverses the roles, right? So it's the whole audience is sort of like seeing through the trick. The girl on stage is seeing through the trick, and everyone's like, "What is happening here?" And then all of a sudden, that sets you up for him doing that just to that lady, and the audience is now in on the joke, and it's getting laughs. And then Chris coming out and catching the eggs. You know, that whole juxtaposition. It's really beautiful, man. There's a lot of elements there, and there's conflict built into the thing, right? Because you're like, how's he going to do it now?
Yeah, right.
It's really cool, man.
Yeah, it just goes to show that I don't know if it's Copperfield or Kenner or who's the person involved, but there's always theatricality in everything he does. I mean, he's looking at the music, the staging. He's looking at every element of it.
I think, Adam, that element is actually David.
It is.
Right? Yeah, I think David is the guy that's looking at all of this stuff like it's a Broadway show and it's a story, right? He's looking at it from that very meta view, and all those guys are brought in to help him see that vision through to the end. And to be fair to all of them, I think it's a collaborative process. I think they're all just jamming on ideas and trying to let the best one rise to the top. You know what I mean? And I think that it's an environment where there are no bad ideas. Let's just explore, brainstorm. Let's just push this as far as we can and just make the magic the best that it can be.
And then
there we are, right?
You can't really forget, too, that you're creating magic in a laboratory with unlimited funds, unlimited ability, unlimited research. I mean, you could go run down a road for something for a year and spend hundreds of thousands of dollars and then just go, yeah, it's not going to work. You know what I mean? It's like,
Totally.
I'm sure they don't want to do that, but
I'm sure they do it. I'm sure they do it plenty.
Yeah.
I remember one of the guys that was in my town when I was growing up was a guy named James George, and he's sort of credited as the guy that came up with the ITR, the original ITR. And I was a kid that learned how to do invisible thread from James right at the time he sort of crossed over the threshold and figured out how to put it in a reel. And again, the trick is how do you get, an 80-foot piece of invisible thread stripped, like that was the trick. But he worked it out, he was able to make these thread reels in mass production style and disseminate them around the world. And I remember going to his house one day and hanging out with him. And he just said to me, "You're never going to believe who called this afternoon." "Who's that?" "David Copperfield ordered a reel from me." No kidding. And he asked me if I could make him a custom one, like a giant one for the stage, trying out ideas, man, just seeing how far he can push it. I think that stuff is just happening all the time. Every trick that they see that might potentially work in that show, why not?
I think one of the, I think I might have told this story already, so stop me if I have. I'm sure I told it somewhere, but went to the SAM convention in Vegas. And, you know, Copperfield that year was getting an award or something. But one of the coolest things was to watch Kenner and Copperfield walk through the dealer's room. Because it was like, you know, everyone was like, get the best thing we have. Here comes Kenner. You know, it's like that kind of thing. And
Yep.
I mean, as he walked the dealer room, it was nobody in front of Copperfield and 500 magicians walking behind him as he like circled this giant room full of stuff. It was pretty cool, man. And he took over an hour. He had his kids and his wife there, and he was very relaxed and, you know, taking selfies. He was very cool.
Yeah.
Very cool.
Yeah, both of those guys, I found them to be nothing but that, especially the folks that just need to have time with David or with Chris. They're, you know, very generous with their time, happy that someone even cares, you know.
I think that particular time, Kenner lectured at the SAM in Vegas at that convention, right? Mm-hmm. And Copperfield showed up for that to watch Kenner's lecture. And I think it was the first time that they really, because there was a long time there where Copperfield was not extending his hand to the magicians. Sure. You know, he was kind of away from that, you know. And I think right around that time was when they decided, hey, that's not what we want to do, you know. And so he really made himself available. It was very cool, and he was very nice.
You know, he's the reason I got into magic, because I saw Copperfield when I was 5 years old in Kansas City in 1980, and met him after the show, you know.
And he was just as cool as he could be to you, right?
Yeah. I mean, Copperfield, I was like, I'm going to be a magician when I grew up. And he's like, you're going to be a great magician, you know, just as nice as could be to me.
Great.
And that's,
I love hearing that.
Here I am now. So I think we all hold this place in our heart for Copperfield. This final clip it really just plays on what you were just talking about, Alex, right? Because this is a continuation of the story. It's the final clip of the day, but I think we've saved like maybe one of the better ones for last, because I remember seeing this for the first time, and I had an idea of what was going on, but then again, man.
This is what, going back to James George, this is sort of where our conversation started, was with this effect, because he was the guy that I knew that was an expert on this stuff. And later I found out that he was sort of one of the, at least in this country, one of the major experts on this stuff. And it opened up a whole new avenue for me. I think this is one of the great magic tricks that David does. This is one of my first magic special. This was on it, and I think all of these probably have the same thing in common. I played the tape over and over again, worried that I might wear out the tape. You know what I mean?
What's your name? Big Hand for Sherry. Sherry, say hello, audience.
Hello, audience. All right. Sherry, I've got this piece of tissue paper. I want you to unfold it, make sure it looks good to you. Make sure there's nothing funny about it or phony about it. Look okay? Because I'm going to do something right in the middle of the audience. Hold on, just a favor. Be real careful.
Richie goes, at that moment, she might be pregnant.
Yeah, maybe.
Awesome.
It's sort of a perfect magic trick, isn't it?
Kevin
Man.
James was having a really good day when he invented that.
Oh, he
Right?
was.
It's just such a great trick, and it's so doable. That's the thing about it. You know what I mean? That thing is so doable. It's just great.
Yeah, I mean, there's certain parts of your body that must move. That must move fast. But I will say, if you're gonna do a flotation, that's the one I'd want to do right there.